So, what's happening in Iran right now, in January 2026, has become this flashpoint that's having consequences all over the world. We're watching a nation, and maybe the whole world really, get caught in a kind of Zugzwang. That's a chess term, right? It's where any move you make just makes your situation worse. So, let's break down exactly how we got here.
First, we're going to look at the flashpoint itself, kind of the timeline of this whole crisis. Then we'll zoom right into the epicenter, Iran, to really get a handle on the pressures building up inside and pushing from the outside. After that, we'll pull the lens back to see how this fits into a huge global shift, where resources are starting to matter more than rules. We'll touch on the new digital battlefield in this conflict, and then wrap it all up by looking at how this is a major test for the entire global system.
The world is absolutely captivated by just how fast and how intense all of this is. What really started as a local problem has just exploded into a global crisis in, a matter of weeks?
Just look at this timeline. It shows you the insane speed of this collapse. It all kicks off in late December 2025 when the national currency, the rial, basically just implodes. That sparks economic protests. By early January, bam, those protests have spread to over 120 cities. The regime's response? It's swift and it's brutal. A total internet blackout across the country and a violent crackdown. And that's the moment the White House comes out and says a red line has been crossed, which, pushes this whole thing right to the edge of a major international war.
So, when you get to the heart of it, Iran is just being squeezed by two massive forces at the same time. You've got this explosion of anger from inside the country, and at the same time, this immense pressure from the outside.
To really get that internal explosion, you just have to look at these numbers. The currency is practically worthless. Food prices, they've shot up by around 70% in 1 year. Medicine is up by almost 50%. For millions of regular Iranians, this isn't about politics anymore. It's a day-to-day fight to survive. And that right there is the fuel for all this anger on the streets.
And the regime's response has been, it's been brutal. Human rights groups have managed to confirm a minimum of 648 deaths, but with the internet completely shut down, getting information out is incredibly hard. And frankly, a lot of people fear the real number is tragically way up in the thousands. So this internal crisis, it's given a huge platform to the opposition outside the country. Reza Pahlavi, who is the son of the last Shah and lives in the US, has really grabbed this moment. He's not just asking for protests anymore, he is calling for a full-on uprising, telling people to physically take over the centers of their cities.
But, and this is a really important but, there is a completely different take on his actual influence. Analyst argues that Pahlavi's support is mostly just a creation of the Western media. Inside Iran, he says, nobody's really feeling nostalgic for the monarchy. Pahlavi is seen by a lot of people as an outsider, a kind of figurehead who could only ever take power if foreign countries put him there.
Okay, now let's look at that external pressure, especially from Washington, because what we're seeing is fascinating. Publicly, the talk is all aggressive, right? You've got President Trump talking about very tough options. But behind closed doors, it seems like a very different story is playing out. Officials are hinting that the private messages they're getting from Tehran are nothing like the regime's defiant public statements. It sounds like there's a frantic, back-channel scramble to de-escalate. So what exactly are these tough options? Well, military planners have laid out the scenarios, but every single one comes with a horrifying price tag. You strike the nuclear sites, you risk rallying the Iranian people against a foreign attacker. You hit military headquarters in the middle of crowded cities, you're guaranteeing huge numbers of civilian deaths. Even if you target oil and gas infrastructure to try and bankrupt the regime, you're directly hurting the general population.
The sheer complexity and the terrifying risks of these military options kind of forced us to step back and ask a much, much bigger question. If you look at history, does this kind of intervention usually lead to stable, independent countries? Or does it just, swap one kind of control for another?
Okay, let's zoom out. This crisis in Iran isn't happening in a bubble. It's really a symptom of a much bigger shift in global power, one where it feels like the old rulebook is just getting tossed out the window. We're seeing the rise of what some people are calling a Monroe Doctrine 2.0. The basic idea is that having direct, physical control over critical resources, things like oil, strategic minerals, shipping lanes, is becoming way more important than international law. And look, this isn't just some abstract theory. It has real-world effects on everything, from the price of gas to whether the stuff you order online actually shows up.
And right at the heart of all this is the US dollar. For decades, it's been an incredibly powerful weapon. It's what allows Washington to enforce sanctions and project its power. But there's a side effect to weaponizing the dollar like this. It makes other countries desperate to create their own financial systems to get around it. and that risks breaking apart the very global system that gives the dollar its power to begin with.
This tension between national interests and global finance brings up a really fundamental question about power today. I mean, when we see these huge geopolitical moves, all centered on resources and financial control, who's really calling the shots? Is it the will of the voter? Or is it the interests of these powerful, deeply connected corporate and political groups?
You know, this conflict is also being fought on a battlefield that's completely modern, the digital frontier.
And here, the battle lines couldn't be clearer. The regime's ultimate weapon is the information kill switch, a total nationwide internet blackout. It's meant to isolate its people and hide what it's doing. The counterweapon? Decentralized satellite internet, a way to completely bypass state control and connect to the outside world. This isn't just about sending messages, it's a fight for digital sovereignty itself. And this is absolutely crucial. There are an estimated 20,000, or even more, active Starlink terminals inside Iran. SpaceX provided them for free, and these little satellite dishes have become an absolute lifeline for protesters. It's how they organize, and it's how they show the world what's happening. Of course, that also means that every single one of those dishes is a physical target for electronic warfare and tracking, turning digital access into a life-or-death struggle on the ground.
So, as we start to bring all these threads together, it becomes pretty clear that what's happening in Iran is so much more than just a regional crisis. This is a test for the entire global system.
The ripples from this are spreading far and wide. You see a Europe that's struggling with its own energy problems, making it really hard for it to act like a decisive, independent player. You see it speeding up that global shift away from a rules-based system to one that's just based on raw power. Ultimately, this moment is a profound test of resilience for literally every country out there. And that's really the key takeaway here. The events in Iran, the economic stuff, the military threats, the information war, they're all symptoms of a global system that's under an incredible amount of stress. A system whose fundamental rules are being rewritten right in front of us.
And all of this leaves us with some really critical questions to think about. You know, as these internal pressures are building up in countries all over the world, are we starting to see a trend where going to war becomes a tool to manage or distract from problems at home?
And maybe the biggest question of all, at what point did the world really start to pivot away from a system based on rules? What was the event, or the series of events, that kicked off this whole cascade of instability that we're all living through right now?
We are really keen to hear what you think about these questions, so please share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for joining us, and make sure you subscribe for more analysis that helps you understand the deeper forces that are shaping our world.